Hey everybody, it's Jay from Three Rivers Outdoors. I'm going to show you our antique store find today. We found an old Wagner ware cast iron pan at a local antique store, and it's kind of beat up. It's a little rusty. It's got a lot of caking on the outside. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you briefly a foolproof method on how to clean and season an old cast iron pan. Stay tuned. So step one of this process is you're gonna take your cast iron pan, if it's really bad, and we're gonna use a metal wire wheel on a drill like this. We're gonna take off some of the gunk. Once you're pretty convinced that your pan has had most of the rust and grime removed, then we'll move to the next step, which is a baking soda and vinegar bath. Okay, so after about an hour of the wire wheel, this is what our pan looks like. So you can see there it's super smooth, very flat. Even on the other side here, you can now read the Wagner ware logo. The 1058F is the pan. There is a little bit of pitting on this pan, but not very much. So our next step, what we're gonna show you is the baking soda and vinegar bath. So guys, what I like to do now is I like to get some pure distilled white vinegar, and I like to put it in the pan with just a little bit of baking soda. And then I like to get a piece of steel wool, and as that reaction happens, I just like to give it a nice little scrub, especially in the areas on the edges where oftentimes you can't really get very well with the wire wheel. You'll notice that you are going to get some gray kind of muck in the pan, and that's just removing the old carbon that used to be on this pan, which is, you know, pretty old pan. I haven't checked the date, but it sat really nice and flat at the antique store, and the price was right. We see these online for $80 and $90 sometimes, and a good cast iron pan, if maintained, will last a very, very, very long time. So once you've given the one side, and you can see the muck that kind of comes out of there, once you've given the side a nice rinse, you're going to do the exact same thing with the other side. And one other thing that you can do, if you really want to scour it, is get some coarse salt, almost like a sea salt, and put about maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons in your pan. Whoops. And then you can use your same scrubber, and that sea salt will help to loosen any of that excess carbon that you see on your pan. You can do this on both sides, and then what you're going to want to do is rinse this pan very, very thoroughly, because as you can see, there's a lot of black kind of gunk that's going to come off of the pan. And that's just, like I said, it's just years and years of cooking and carbon buildup. If done correctly, seasoned correctly, a cast iron pan is one of the most non-stick surfaces that you can have in your kitchen. And we're going to show you tonight actually what this pan looks like when it's all done. And we even went and bought some filet mignon steaks that we're going to show you how we make a nice butter and rosemary steak right in this pan that we just bought today after it's been properly seasoned and ready to go. So stay tuned, and I'm going to finish my little salt scrub here after the vinegar bath, and we'll show you what's next. So after you've rinsed your pan completely and thoroughly with water, and you're confident that you've gotten out all the rust and the gunk the best that you can, take a dry paper towel. You're going to want to wipe the pan out and get it as dry as you possibly can. You're going to notice that your paper towel is going to be really dirty. It should look like this. If it doesn't, you're not doing it right. So you want to get a couple of these paper towels. You want to continue to wipe your pan until your paper towels start to come pretty clean, to the point where they're not going to be pearly white, but you're going to see that you've gotten most of the gunk off of the pan. Now the next step is very important. What you need to do is you need to place this pan on a hot surface like a gas stove and make sure it is perfectly and completely dry before the next step. So if you hang on, we're going to put this pan on the stove, we're going to warm it up, make sure it's nice and hot before we put our oil. So now once your pan is nice and hot, you should be able to feel it kind of, sort of hot, warm to the touch here on both sides. You're going to notice that it's going to look a very silvery color, not like the dark black cast iron that we normally would associate with a cast iron pan. So what we'll do next is we're going to let this pan cool down for approximately 5 minutes. After your pan is sort of cooled to the touch, we wanted to kind of give you just a little bit of reasoning as to why you want to season your cast iron skillet. First, you're going to coat this skillet in a light coat of some kind of an oil, and we're going to talk about those oils here really shortly. If you like to repeat the oil coating process, you're going to get an even more non-stick coating on your pan. A lot of people will tell you that your cast iron is actually going to improve over time as you continue to use it. So that's obviously dependent upon how you clean it and what you do with it. Now, people will argue that bacon grease or lard is the best seasoning for this. Probably 50 or 100 years ago, that's really what people used. And it was just because it was cheap and it was readily available, and that's really what people did when they wanted to season their cast iron pan. But really, you have to consider the oil with saturated fat versus unsaturated fat. The best types of oil to season your cast iron skillet will actually have a high level of unsaturated fat. So some of the things that you don't want to use are oils like coconut oil, for example. Coconut oil has a very high level of saturated fat, which is not going to let the oil kind of soak into the pan. So some people will say the smoke point is important. I don't really think so. If you have flaxseed oil or if you have grapeseed oil, those are really the two best oils that you can use, although they're a little bit more expensive. More commonly, one of the oils that we like to use is olive oil. It does have about 73%, which is monounsaturated fat, 11% polyunsaturated fat, and 14% saturated fat. So it's kind of on the higher end of the flaxseed and grapeseed oil, but it's readily available, and it is good to use. One of the things about the cheap old vegetable oil or Crisco that you're gonna get is that it has a pretty high level of the saturated fat. So again, it's not all that great, and it does have some impurities in it, which is gonna mean that it's not gonna season as well. So my top three are gonna be flaxseed oil, grapeseed oil, or olive oil. Especially if you have a good olive oil, you're gonna do really, really well. So what we're gonna show you now is we've seasoned the pan, we've heated it up, it's perfectly dry. Next step is we're gonna coat this pan with a layer of olive oil, and we're gonna put it in the oven at 550 for 1 hour. So the next step is to make sure you have a good olive oil, flaxseed oil, or grapeseed oil, and you're gonna coat this pan in its entirety. So we just have some olive oil here in our little Blackstone squirter. We can get a paper towel. Now on new cast iron, you don't want to use a paper towel because the paper towel kind of will get into the little grooves of it, and you're going to want to just coat every square inch of this pan, even the handle. I like to do it on a paper towel or some newspaper here so that it doesn't get everywhere. And you want to give it a pretty healthy coating, because remember, what's going to happen is this oil is going to infuse itself into the cast iron. It's called, I think, like a polymerization or something. But what you want is to have a nice thick coat of oil all over the pan. And then what we're going to do once this happens is, as I said earlier, we are going to take this pan, we're going to turn it upside down. We're going to put it in the oven for 1 hour at 550 degrees and let this oil actually bake into the cast iron to create a very nice, very, very smooth finish that will be as non-stick as possible. So we'll show you that next step here in 1 second. So the next step, we had our oven preheated to 550 degrees. We've coated our pan in oil. This rag is a little oily here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna place this down, upside down, wipe the last little bit of oil onto the pan, stick it on the upper rack, and we're gonna set our timer. Well, actually, we don't really need a timer. We're gonna take this out at 7:11. Okay guys, so it's been an hour and our pan has been on 550. So I'm gonna bring the pan out and show you what it looks like. As you can see, the pan has that beautiful black finish on it. It's nice and shiny. All the letters are super clear. So we're gonna get ready with that very pan that we just seasoned to make our dinner tonight, which we're at Strip District Meats in Pittsburgh. And we bought 3 beautiful fillets. So you're gonna see how this pan that came from the antique store, this old Wagner ware, probably 70 or 80-year-old pan, is gonna make the best steaks you've ever seen. So a little bit of rosemary and butter in your brand new seasoned cast iron skillet. And we're gonna get our steaks all ready here soon as this rosemary cooks down. So this is our seasoned cast iron pan. We're gonna put our fillets that we marinated in some truffle oil, salt, pepper, and garlic into our pan. And we'll show you the progress. gonna baste these a little with the butter to make sure the meat stays really nice and moist. When it's infused with that rosemary, you will love the taste of your steak, especially on your reconditioned cast iron pan. So, after seasoning your pan and getting everything super ready, this is what you get. A beautiful filet steak, still steaming. That is so good. Thanks for watching Three Rivers Outdoors. We hope you like our video, and we hope your cast iron seasoning and your next steak turns out just like this.